Tonight, it's madness without Max. In a post-apocalyptic world where nobody goes to the movies anymore, that based on box office trends looks less a premonition, more comment on now, in Furiosa, the androgynous years. Question: what makes a big movie, or a movie worthy of cinematic exhibition? I ask because we used to think that, Anthony Hopkins' face in close-up in Silence of the Lambs was big enough for the big screen because it was such a vivid character and such a big performance. We used to fill the big screen with things like psychological intrigue and artistry and things of that nature that made us want to go because we wanted to be alone in a dark room, sutured into that kind of situation where we were pulled into a narrative that captivated us, both brain and body. The critic David Thompson called it beautiful solitude. But nobody goes to the movies anymore, do they? That's why I asked the question. They didn't go to see, for example, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. Why not? $150 million sequel to a moderate hit from 9 years ago. You could argue no one was interested in this particular prequel because they weren't particularly bursting to know about Furiosa's backstory. Or you could argue that they waited too long. 9 years is a very long time for a sequel. But maybe, hell, there was 30 years between Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome and Mad Max Fury Road. People still showed up, so perhaps the studio thought 9 years is nothing. But nobody went to see it. Why? Massive spectacle, George Miller at his sort of kinetic, stylized best. This man knows how to put together action sequences like almost nobody else in Hollywood. And we're using Hollywood here in the generic sense because, of course, this is Ausploitation with a budget. This is really Australian filmmaking with American money. But then I saw Furiosa and suddenly I think I understood what the problem was. I had to really push myself to go and see it because, full confession to you, I'm not a massive Mad Max fan. I like Ausploitation. I like the Mad Max movies. I think there are sequences in them that are breathtaking in terms of their scope and artistry. I love it on a superficial level. But no Mad Max movie will ever be in my top 10 because ultimately there is no emotional connection there. There's no psychological stimulus. It's all sensory stimuli. In the kind of grindhouseian sense, you see. And that's a great hit when you're watching it. It's like a shot of heroin right into the thick vein in your cock. But you come down, don't you? And when you do, there's nothing there. You can't remember what you did. Got a vague sense of, running down the Royal Mile in Edinburgh, being chased by a security guard from Marks and Spencer, but you can't really remember anything that you did because there was nothing to grab the memory. That's the problem with Furiosa. It's a lovely looking movie. Okay, some of it looks a little bit confected, a little bit too sort of touched up. in a CG sense, but there's some lovely practical action here. Really grandly mounted action that does feel very old school, does have that same spirit as the original Mad Max or the Road Warrior. You're right back in that kind of world. Everything's more polished, the colours are more vivid, more saturated. But Mad Max was always about great stunts and larger-than-life characters, you know. It's almost a silent movie, and the characters are made up that way. Particularly Anna Taylor-Joyless in this movie. It's all acting with the eyes. Lots of great eye acting. Very silent movie era stuff. It's all about gesture and flamboyance. Dialogue is just economically used to just keep us going and link scenes, really. That's all it's about. But if there was no dialogue, we could pretty much follow everything that's going on. It's that kind of movie. And all of that's fine. But there's just not much more to it than that, ladies and genitals. You know, these are one-dimensional characters. They embody ideas or attitudes rather than being fully formed human beings. And the revenge narrative, you know, the girl snatched from her mother who's taken hostage by, you know, her kidnappers and brutalised and desensitised over time and joining, you know, Dementus's Congress of Destruction and taking on, as one character says, a purposeful savagery is all well and good, but it's a very well-worn narrative. We've seen it many, many times in many different guises. There's nothing new there. What's not new necessarily, but unique to this series, of course, is the canvas on which this story is painted. The kind of world and action that we associate with Mad Max. That's fine. But in the end, though it grips while you're watching it, though there are pacing problems, this movie is far too long, by the way. It could easily be about 45 minutes shorter. And its conclusion does take a bit of time. It's paced leisurely. It has to be said, the final 20-30 minutes. To the point where you could find your mind wandering a touch. You've still got a great movie for the big screen, but only in that superficial sense that we're talking about. Only in the sense that these are detailed practical effects and visual effects that have been made for, you know, grand scale projection. But when it comes to what a big movie really is, what a movie worthy of theatrical exhibition really is, in an era where we're so malnourished cinematically, where we've got so little to look forward to, where we don't have a star system any longer, where there's this dearth of original stories, it all feels a little bit derivative, a little bit empty, and a little bit unnecessary. Another bloody prequel. Another movie that is really well made, but has no depth. IP. And when people ask the question, why don't we go to the movies anymore? It's because Hollywood hasn't learned the lesson of Oppenheimer or Barbie or Barbenheimer. That people do want to go to the movies, but they want to see movies. They want to see something that gets into their head and their heart, as well as stimulating the senses. People were excited about those two movies because they genuinely didn't know what they were going to get. Everybody seemed to like Mad Max Fury Road, didn't they? You know, one of the great action movies of the 2010s. But can I remember a fucking thing about it? No. And I liked it. But I've never felt compelled to rewatch it. And I can't imagine I'll ever feel compelled to rewatch Furiosa either, unless Miller decides to make Mad Max The Wasteland, which based on the box office for Furiosa looks highly unlikely now. But if he does make it, I would like to see him challenge himself to make it for a much smaller budget. Old school. Come on, George, you made The Road Warrior for $10 million. You can do it. You know, this sort of movie doesn't have to have a budget of $150 million, does it? So, that's all there is to say, really. Mad Max, without Mad Max, is a dynamic, visceral, thrilling experience in places. But Anna Taylor-Joy, well, is she a strong enough centre? Is she a dynamic enough presence to carry the movie? I would argue no. It's not because she's a woman. Before you start, many people will attribute indifference to this movie to the fact that Anna Taylor-Joy is in the leading role. I think that she's miscast, not because she gives a bad performance. I mean, she's does some great intense eye acting, and she delivers her 30 lines of dialogue perfectly. The problem is not that. The problem is, do we believe that this tiny, thin, androgynous-looking girl is a hard-bitten shit kicker who can battle away through the world of Mad Max? We kind of believed it when she was Charlize Theron because she had a bit more meat on her, and she seemed a little more I don't know, butch. But Anna Taylor-Joy, I mean, as one friend of mine put it to me, she looks like an embryo. An ingenue as an action heroine, it doesn't work, does it? It's not the gender of the character, it's the way that she has been actualised on screen that makes you doubt yourself. You know, she looks like a strong wind could blow over, let alone a ruthless gang of demented bikers, etc. So Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, is visually sumptuous, very Australian, and, you know, boy, do those colours hurt the eyes. Does it complement Mad Max Fury Road? Yes, very much so. It adds backstory to that movie, which arguably improves it slightly. I'm sure that the two of them together are a good pair. It certainly does nothing to undermine or diminish Mad Max Fury Road if you're a Mad Max Fury Road fan. I'm not a massive Mad Max fan, as I said, but if you love it, you're certainly not going to feel cheated by Furiosa, I can tell you that. But for a broad general audience, there's not really very much to get excited about here. No one who's interested in movies that move you or make you think or pull you into that world and hold you there for years and years to come, so you're forced to keep revisiting that world in order to get more of that hit. Those people aren't going to find much to crow about with this film. But there are sand and motor fetishists out there, and for you, well, all your Christmases have come at once. Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga is rated 15 for Anna Taylor-Joy's androgynous character, Chris Hemsworth's Australian accent, and a man who wears a suit that exposes his nipples. And you can see it in the cinema now. In fact, you'll absolutely be able to get a seat because no one else has gone. Until next time, I'm Dr. Macclevoid, but it's not my real name. Goodbye.